The fluorescent lights in Roosevelt Elementary's teacher's lounge flickered with their usual tired rhythm, casting shadows across the stack of unpaid bills. Emma Carter had spread across the chipped formica table, 27 years old with a master's degree in education, and she was 3 months behind on rent, eating ramen for the 4th night in a row, and seriously considering selling her car just to make it through another month. Her phone buzzed, another text from her landlord. This one didn't bother with pleasantries. Final notice. Pay by Friday or I'm filing eviction papers. Don't test me. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Emma's hands trembled as she shoved the phone into her purse. Friday was 2 days away. She had $63 in her checking account and wouldn't get paid for another week. The math didn't work. It never worked anymore. Still, Carter? Principal Morrison stuck his head through the doorway, his expression hovering between concern and irritation. It's almost 7. Go home. Home. The word felt hollow. Home was a studio apartment in the worst part of Chicago's South Side, where gunshots were background music and the heat only worked half the time. But it was hers, or it had been, until she'd fallen so far behind that home was about to become homeless. Just finishing up lesson plans, Emma lied, gathering the bills quickly before he could see them. Big day tomorrow. Morrison's eyes lingered on her for a moment too long, taking in the worn cardigan she'd owned since college, the shoes she'd wrestled twice, the exhaustion she couldn't quite hide anymore. But he said nothing. Budget cuts meant everyone was struggling. Her problems weren't special. The October wind hit her like a fist when she stepped outside. Chicago's weather had turned vicious seemingly overnight, winter arriving early and angry. Emma wrapped her thin coat tighter and headed for the bus stop, passing the luxury cars in the visitor parking lot. A parent-teacher conference must have run late. That's when she heard it. A child crying, not the performative tantrum of a kid who wanted candy, but the raw, desperate sobbing of someone truly scared. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Emma froze, her teacher instincts overriding everything else. The sound was coming from near the playground, from the darkness beyond the parking lot lights. She should walk away, mind her business, get on the bus and deal with her own overwhelming problems. But that sound, that heartbroken, terrified crying, her feet carried her toward the playground before her brain could object. As she rounded the corner of the building, she found the source. A little boy, maybe 4 years old, sat alone on the bottom of the slide. His small body shook with sobs, his face buried in his hands. He wore expensive clothes, a tiny wool coat that probably cost more than Emma's monthly grocery budget, leather shoes that gleamed even in the dim light. But despite all that luxury, he looked utterly abandoned. Emma approached slowly, crouching down a few feet away. "Hey there, sweetie. Are you okay?" The boy didn't respond, didn't even look up, just kept crying those awful, gulping sobs that made Emma's chest ache. "Where's your mama or papa?" Emma tried again, switching to a softer tone. Still nothing. She moved closer, close enough now to see his face in the glow from the parking lot lights. Dark curls stuck to his tear-stained cheeks. His eyes were squeezed shut, and he was whispering something between sobs. Words Emma couldn't quite make out. Then she heard it. Italian. The boy was crying in Italian. Emma's grandmother had immigrated from Naples, had raised Emma speaking both English and Italian interchangeably. It was one of Emma's few advantages in her neighborhood school. She could communicate with the Italian immigrant families, could make the children feel seen and understood. But she'd never expected to need it like this. "Dove la mamma?" Emma asked gently in Italian. "Where is Mama?" The boy's head snapped up. His eyes, red-rimmed and swollen, locked onto her face with desperate hope. "Non c'è più," he whispered. "She's not here anymore." Emma's heart cracked. The way he said it, with that particular kind of grief, told her everything. Not, she's not here right now, but non c'è più, she's gone. Forever. "Mi dispiace tanto," Emma said softly, moving to sit beside him on the cold metal slide. "I'm so sorry. Come ti chiami? What's your name?" "Marco," the boy whispered, then fresh tears spilled down his cheeks. "Ho paura. Dove papa? I'm scared. Where's Papa?" Sono sicura che arriverà presto, Emma assured him, though she had no idea if that was true. I'm sure he'll come soon. Voi ci restiamo insieme fino a quando non arriva. Do you want us to stay together until he gets here? Marco nodded frantically, then did something that made Emma's breath catch. He climbed into her lap, wrapping his small arms around her neck and burying his face against her shoulder. His little body shook with silent sobs, and Emma found herself rocking him gently, murmuring soft reassurances in Italian. Va tutto bene, tesoro. Sei al sicuro. Non sei solo. It's all okay, sweetheart. You're safe. You're not alone. She had no idea how long they sat there. 5 minutes, 10. Marco's crying gradually subsided into hiccups, then quiet sniffles. He didn't let go of her, though. Just held on like she was the only solid thing in his world. Emma heard footsteps, multiple sets, moving fast across the parking lot. Marco. A man's voice, deep and commanding, cut through the evening air. The single word carried relief, fury, and terror in equal measure. Emma looked up, and her heart stopped. 3 men emerged from the shadows. No, not men. Forces of nature. They moved with the predatory grace of people who knew violence intimately, who commanded it daily. 2 of them wore dark suits that did nothing to hide the bulk of weapons beneath. Their eyes swept the playground with military precision, cataloging threats, calculating distances. But it was the 3rd man who stole Emma's breath. He was tall, easily 6'3", with broad shoulders that filled out his charcoal suit like it had been painted on. His face could have been carved from marble, sharp jaw, strong nose, eyes so dark they looked black in the dim light. But it was his presence that truly struck her. He didn't just occupy space. He owned it, commanded it, made everything else feel small and insignificant. This was a man accustomed to absolute obedience, a man who'd never heard the word no, and survived to enforce consequences on anyone foolish enough to say it. Marco's head lifted. Papa. The boy scrambled out of Emma's lap and ran toward the man, who caught him in one fluid motion, lifting him against his chest. Dove sei stato? Mi hai spaventato a morte. Where have you been? You scared me to death. The man's voice was rough with emotion as he clutched Marco close, one large hand cradling the back of the boy's head. Then his eyes cold, assessing, dangerous, locked onto Emma. She stood slowly, suddenly aware of how vulnerable she was, alone in a darkening playground with 3 men who looked like they'd stepped out of a crime drama. Her teacher instincts had overridden her survival instincts, and now she was paying the price. Who are you? Who are you? The man's English was perfect, but carried the faint music of an Italian accent beneath. Why were you with my son? I'm a teacher here, Emma said, proud that her voice didn't shake. She gestured toward the school building. I heard him crying. He was alone and scared. I was just making sure he was okay. The man studied her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. His eyes traveled from her face down to her worn coat, her teacher's badge still clipped to her collar, then back up, reading her, dissecting her, determining if she was a threat or just collateral. Papa, è gentile, Marco said against his father's shoulder. Papa, she's nice. Parla italiano come la mamma. She speaks Italian like mama. Something flickered across the man's face. Pain, perhaps. Or recognition. His grip on Marco tightened fractionally. You speak Italian, he said, not a question. An observation. My grandmother was from Naples, Emma replied. I grew up speaking it. What did my son tell you? Emma hesitated. The boy had mentioned his mother in a way that suggested loss, grief, but sharing that felt like a betrayal of the small confidence Marco had given her. He told me his name, Emma said carefully. That he was scared, that he wanted his papa. She met the man's gaze directly, refusing to be intimidated, despite the fear coiling in her stomach. So I stayed with him until you came. That's all. The man's eyes narrowed slightly. He was still calculating, still determining what to do with her. One of his guards stepped forward, murmuring something in rapid Italian that Emma couldn't quite catch. But she heard enough. Background check, school records, determine if she's a risk. That won't be necessary, the man said quietly, his eyes never leaving Emma's face. He shifted Marco in his arms, then did something unexpected. He extended his free hand. Dante Caruso. Emma's blood turned to ice. She'd lived in Chicago long enough to know that name. Dante Caruso, who owned half the restaurants on the north side, whose name appeared in newspaper articles about organized crime, always with the careful qualifier allege, whose family had controlled Chicago's Italian community for 3 generations. She was standing in a playground at dusk with one of the most dangerous men in the city, her hand, moved before her brain could stop it, shaking his. His grip was firm, warm, completely engulfing her smaller hand. "Emma Carter, you're a teacher here," Dante said, glancing toward Roosevelt Elementary. "What subject?" "3rd grade. Everything." Emma tried to pull her hand back, but he held it a moment longer. Not threatening, just present. "I should go. My bus. I'll have my driver take you home." It wasn't an offer. It was a statement of fact. "That's not necessary. Really. I'm fine taking the bus." Dante's expression didn't change, but something in the air shifted. "Miss Carter, you helped my son when he needed someone. You could have walked past. Most people would have. But you didn't. You sat with him, spoke to him in his mother's language, gave him comfort when he was alone and terrified." His voice dropped lower. "That's not something I forget. And I don't let people who help my family take the bus home in the dark." One of the guards was already pulling out a phone, making a call. Emma realized with a sinking sensation that arguing would be pointless. When someone like Dante Caruso decided something, it happened. "Viene con noi?" Marco asked, lifting his head. "Is she coming with us?" His small hand reached toward Emma. "Per favore, papa?" "For a little while," Dante said gently to his son. Then to Emma, "The car is this way." Emma followed because what choice did she have? The 2 guards flanked them as they walked toward the visitor parking lot, where a gleaming black Mercedes waited. Not just any Mercedes, the kind with armor plating and windows so dark they were probably illegal. The interior smelled like leather and money. Emma had never been in a car this nice. Probably never would be again. She sat stiffly on one side while Dante settled Marco in the middle, the boy immediately reaching for Emma's hand. "Where do you live?" Dante asked as the driver pulled smoothly onto the street. Emma gave the address, watching his expression carefully. He didn't react, but she saw the slight tightening around his eyes. He knew that neighborhood, knew what living there meant. "You teach 3rd grade?" Dante said after a moment of silence. "Why Roosevelt?" "It's not exactly—" He paused, clearly choosing his words carefully. "The most prestigious school in the district. It's where they needed teachers," Emma said simply. "And the kids there need someone who cares. Most people don't want to work in that neighborhood. But you do. Someone has to." Emma looked down at Marco, who had curled up against her side, his eyes drooping with exhaustion. Every kid deserves a teacher who sees them, who believes in them. Money doesn't change that. Dante was quiet for a long moment. When she glanced at him, he was studying her again with that unnerving intensity. "Your Italian is excellent. Better than excellent. You have a Neapolitan accent. Like I said, my grandmother, most people lose their accents by your age unless they practice regularly. You sound like you still speak it daily." Emma felt her cheeks warm. "I practice with the kids at school. We have a lot of Italian immigrant families. It helps them feel less alone." Something shifted in Dante's expression. Not quite a smile, but a softening. "My son hasn't spoken Italian since his mother died. 6 months. The therapist said he'd retreated into silence, that we might never hear him speak it again." His hand rested on Marco's back. "Tonight you had him talking within minutes. He just needed someone who understood," Emma said quietly. "Grief is lonely, especially for children." The car slowed, pulling up to Emma's building. In the darkness, it looked even worse than usual. Graffiti covered the walls. 2 windows on the ground floor were boarded up. A group of men stood on the corner, their eyes tracking the Mercedes with obvious interest. "This is where you live?" Dante's voice had gone cold. Not angry. Something else. Something dangerous. "It's not as bad as it looks," Emma lied. "I'm on the 4th floor. Better security." "There is no security." Dante leaned forward, speaking rapidly in Italian to his driver. The man nodded, pulling out his phone. "What are you doing?" Emma asked. "Making arrangements." "I don't need Miss Carter." Dante turned to face her fully. My son spent tonight terrified because his security detail lost track of him for 10 minutes. 10 minutes. In that time, he wandered away from the conference, out of the building, into a dark playground where anything could have happened. But instead of danger, he found you. I was just in the right place. You were exactly where you needed to be, where he needed you to be. Dante's eyes held hers. I don't believe in coincidence, Miss Carter. I believe in fate. And fate put you in that playground tonight for a reason. Emma's throat felt tight. What reason? That's what I intend to find out. He reached into his jacket, pulling out a business card. My personal number. If you need anything, and I suspect you will call me. Emma took the card with numb fingers. Heavy stock, embossed lettering. Just a name and number. No business. No title. People who needed to know who Dante Caruso was already knew. Thank you for the ride, Emma managed. I hope Marco feels better. She moved to open the door, but Dante's hand caught her wrist. Not hard, just enough to stop her. Aspetta, he said softly. Wait, non ho finito. I'm not finished. Emma's heart hammered. Finished with what? Dante glanced down at Marco, who had fallen asleep against Emma's side. When he looked back at her, his expression was unreadable. My son hasn't let anyone touch him since his mother died. Not his grandmother, not his aunts, not any of the nannies or therapists I've hired. He screams when strangers try to hold him. Emma looked down at the sleeping boy, his small hand still clutching her fingers. But he climbed into your lap, Dante continued. Let you hold him. Found. Comfort in your presence. His grip on her wrist tightened fractionally. Tell me, Miss Carter, what do you know about my family? The truth hovered on Emma's lips. That she'd heard the name Caruso, associated with words like syndicate and organized crime. That everyone knew the Caruso family controlled territory, businesses, things that weren't exactly legal. That Dante Caruso was dangerous, powerful, untouchable. I know you love your son, Emma said instead. I know you were terrified when you couldn't find him. I know you'd do anything to protect him. She met his gaze steadily. That's all that matters to me. Dante released her wrist slowly. A smile ghosted across his lips. There and gone so quickly she might have imagined it. Most people in this city fear me, Miss Carter. You should too. Maybe I do, Emma admitted. But Marco doesn't. And right now, that seems more important. Interessante, Dante murmured. Interesting. He carefully lifted Marco from Emma's side, cradling his sleeping son against his chest. The boy steered, whimpering softly. Ecchi papa. Sei al sicuro. Papa's here. You're safe. Emma opened the car door, the cold October air rushing in. She was halfway out when Dante spoke again. Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m., a car will pick you up. Emma turned. What? You'll have breakfast with us, at my home. Dante's tone made it clear this wasn't a request. Marco will want to see you, and I have a proposition to discuss. I have to be at school by 7:30. You'll be there on time. I promise. Something glinted in Dante's dark eyes. Don't make me ask twice, Miss Carter. I'm not accustomed to it. The car door closed before Emma could respond. She stood on the cracked sidewalk, watching the Mercedes pull away, its taillights disappearing into the Chicago night. Her hands shook as she climbed the 4 flights to her apartment. The card Dante had given her felt heavy in her pocket, like it was made of lead instead of paper. Inside her tiny studio, Emma sank onto her second-hand couch and pulled out the card. The number stared back at her, innocuous and terrifying all at once. She'd just been pulled into the orbit of Dante Caruso, a man who controlled this city from the shadows. A man whose son had found comfort in her arms. A man who'd made it clear he didn't accept no as an answer. Emma should be terrified, should be planning how to avoid that car in the morning, how to extract herself from whatever this was before it consumed her. Instead, she thought about Marco's small body shaking with sobs, the desperate way he'd clung to her, the grief in his voice when he spoke about his mother. That little boy needed someone, and for reasons Emma couldn't explain, couldn't rationalize, she wanted to be that someone, even if it meant stepping into a world that could destroy her. Emma set her alarm for 6 a.m., knowing she'd be ready when that car arrived, knowing her life had just changed irrevocably, knowing there was no going back from this. Emma didn't sleep. She spent the night pacing her tiny apartment, alternating between terror and something she couldn't quite name. Hope, maybe, or insanity. At 5 a.m., she gave up on rest entirely and stood under the lukewarm spray of her shower, trying to organize her thoughts. Dante Caruso wanted to make her a proposition. That could mean anything. A thank you payment for helping Marco, a warning to stay away from his family, or something else entirely. She dressed carefully in her most professional outfit, a navy dress she'd bought for job interviews 2 years ago, paired with the cardigan that hid the fraying at the seams. In the cracked bathroom mirror, she looked tired, nervous, and completely out of her depth. At 6:45, her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Car is downstairs. Caruso Emma's heart hammered as she grabbed her purse and locked the apartment. In the stairwell, she passed Mrs. Chen from Tresby, who stared openly at Emma's dress. Job interview? The elderly woman asked in Mandarin-accented English. Something like that, Emma replied, not sure how else to explain. The Mercedes waited at the curb, impossibly clean against the grimy backdrop of her neighborhood. The same driver from last night opened the door with a slight nod. No words, just efficiency. The interior was as immaculate as Emma remembered. She sank into the leather seat, feeling like an imposter. People like her didn't ride in cars like this. Didn't get picked up at dawn by drivers in suits. The drive took 20 minutes, carrying her from the crumbling south side into a world of tree-lined streets and houses that deserved to be called estates. They turned through iron gates that opened automatically, up a long driveway flanked by manicured gardens just beginning to show autumn colors. Dante Caruso's home wasn't just large. It was a statement. Mediterranean architecture, with warm stone walls, arched windows, and a fountain in the circular drive. The kind of place that appeared in architecture magazines, completely removed from the reality most people lived. The kind of place Emma had no business being. The driver opened her door. Mr. Caruso is expecting you in the breakfast room. I'll show you the way. Emma followed him through massive double doors into a foyer with marble floors and a chandelier that probably cost more than her yearly salary. Art hung on the walls, real art, not prints. Oil paintings in ornate frames, sculptures on pedestals. Every surface gleamed with the care of professional housekeeping. They walked through hallways that seemed to stretch forever. Past rooms glimpsed through open doorways. A library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. A formal living room with furniture that looked antique and priceless. Finally, the driver stopped at a set of French doors. Through here, miss. Emma stepped into a sun-filled room with windows overlooking the gardens. A table was set for 3, laden with more food than she'd seen in months. Fresh fruit, pastries, eggs, bacon, coffee that smelled like heaven, and sitting at the head of the table, looking entirely too comfortable in dark slacks and a white shirt rolled to his elbows, was Dante Caruso. He stood when she entered. Miss Carter, thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? The words slipped out before Emma could stop them. Dante's mouth curved slightly. No, but I appreciate you pretending I gave you one. He gestured to a chair. Please, sit. Marco will be down shortly. Emma sat, hyper-aware of Dante's gaze tracking her movements. In daylight, he was even more imposing. The hard planes of his face, the silver threading through his dark hair at the temples, the scar that cut through his left eyebrow. This was a man who'd lived through violence and emerged harder for it. Coffee? Dante asked, already pouring from a silver pot. I had my housekeeper prepare a full breakfast. I wasn't sure what you liked. This is too much, Emma said, looking at the spread. You didn't need to. I did. Dante set the coffee before her. When was the last time you ate a real meal, Miss Carter? The question was so direct, so unexpected, that Emma's carefully constructed deflections crumbled. That's not relevant. It is to me. Dante took the seat adjacent to hers rather than at the head of the table, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something expensive and subtle. I had someone look into your background last night. Standard security protocol when anyone comes into contact with my son. Emma's blood ran cold. You investigated me. I protect what's mine. Always. Dante's voice was matter of fact. Emma Catherine Carter. 27. Master's degree in elementary education from Northwestern. Student loan debt totaling $94,000. Current salary, $38,000 per year before taxes. You work at Roosevelt Elementary, one of the lowest performing schools in the Yenbak district. Despite having credentials that would get you hired at private institutions that pay 3 times as much. Emma's hands clenched in her lap. Every private detail of her struggle laid bare over coffee and pastries. You live in a studio apartment in Englewood, Dante continued, 3 months behind on rent. Your landlord filed preliminary eviction paperwork yesterday. You sold your car 2 weeks ago. You take 2 buses to get to work. Your credit cards are maxed out. Your bank account has $63. Stop. Emma's voice shook with humiliation and anger. You've made your point. I'm poor, desperate, completely at your mercy. Is that what you wanted to hear? I wanted you to understand that I know exactly who you are. Dante leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. And what you're facing. Because my proposition requires honesty, Miss Carter. Complete transparency. Before Emma could respond, the sound of small footsteps echoed in the hallway. Marco burst through the doors, his face lighting up when he saw Emma. Emma! He ran straight to her, climbing into her lap without hesitation. Sei tornata. You came back. Emma's heart melted despite everything. She wrapped her arms around the little boy, feeling him nestle against her. Certo che sono tornata, she murmured. Of course I came back. Te lo promesso, ricordi. I promised you, remember? Marco pulled back, his dark eyes so like his father's searching her face. Papa dice, che puoi restare. È vero? Papa says you can stay. Is it true? Emma glanced at Dante, who watched them with an expression she couldn't read. That's what we're here to discuss, tesoro, she said carefully. Mangia, Marco, Dante said gently. Eat. Poi potrai giocare mentre parlo con Emma. Then you can play while I talk to Emma. The meal was surreal. Marco chattered in Italian between bites of pastry, telling Emma about his room, his toys, asking if she liked strawberries because those were his favorite. Dante remained, mostly quiet, but Emma felt his attention like a physical weight. After breakfast, a woman in her 50s appeared, Lucia, the housekeeper who led Marco away for his morning routine. The boy went reluctantly, making Emma promise she'd be there when he finished. Alone with Dante, the room felt smaller, more dangerous. Let me be direct, Dante said, refilling their coffee cups. My son has been effectively mute for 6 months, since his mother's death. The therapist said he'd experienced traumatic selective mutism, that recovery would take time, maybe years, maybe never. Emma nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Last night, he spoke. In Italian. To you. Dante's jaw tightened. This morning, he woke up asking when you were coming. Used full sentences. Expressed excitement. Emotions we haven't seen since. He stopped, breathing carefully. Since we lost Maria. I'm glad he's improving, Emma said softly. But I'm not a therapist. I don't have training in childhood trauma. What happened last night was just lightning in a bottle. Dante's smile was grim. Perhaps. Or perhaps my son recognized something in you that $30,000 worth of specialists couldn't provide. He set down his cup with deliberate precision. I want to hire you. Emma blinked. To do what? Be with Marco. Spend time with him. Speak Italian with him. Help him heal. Dante's gaze held hers. I'll pay off your student loans, all of them. Clear your credit card debt. Cover 6 months' rent on your apartment in advance. Or move you somewhere better if you prefer. Plus a salary of $10,000 a month for as long as Marco needs you. The numbers didn't make sense. Emma's brain stuttered, trying to process them. That's over $200,000. My son's well-being is worth considerably more than that. I can't just quit teaching. I have a contract. Students who depend on me. I'll handle Roosevelt Elementary. A generous donation to the school in exchange for releasing you from your contract. They'll find a replacement. Dante leaned back, utterly confident. This is a limited engagement, Miss Carter. 6 months, maybe a year, until Marco is stable. Then you can return to teaching if you want. With no debt, financial security, and the freedom to choose where you work. It was too much. Too perfect. Too good to be true. What's the catch? Emma asked. Smart question. Dante's expression didn't change. The catch is that you'd be entering my world. A world that comes with certain complications, security concerns, discretion requirements. There are people who would love to find a weakness in my armor, and Marco is my greatest vulnerability. By extension, anyone close to him becomes a target. Fear coiled in Emma's stomach. You're saying I'd be in danger. I'm saying I'd protect you. Completely. My security team is the best in the city. No one would touch you. Dante's voice dropped lower. But you need to understand what you'd be walking into. My family's business isn't always legal. Our methods aren't always clean. I won't lie to you about that. You're asking me to work for a criminal, Emma said bluntly. I'm asking you to help a little boy who lost his mother. Dante's mask slipped for just a moment, and Emma saw the grief beneath. The desperate father who'd watched his son retreat into silence. Everything else is just context. Emma looked down at her hands. $94,000 in student loans. The eviction notice. The constant crushing weight of never having enough. This offer would solve everything. Every problem that kept her awake at night. Gone. But at what cost? I need to think about it, Emma said. Of course. Dante stood smoothly. Take the day. I'll have my driver return you to your apartment. Tomorrow morning, same time, you'll give me your answer. And if I say no, something flickered in Dante's eyes. Then I'll thank you for helping Marco last night. Ensure your financial situation is stabilized through an anonymous donation and never contact you again. He moved toward the door, then paused. But you won't say no, Miss Carter. How can you be so sure? Dante turned back, and his smile was knowing. Because you're already in love with him. I saw it at breakfast. The way you held him, spoke to him. You can't walk away from Marco any more than I can. He tilted his head slightly. The question isn't whether you'll take this job. It's whether you'll admit to yourself that you want to. Emma left the Caruso estate in a daze. The driver deposited her back at her building with a card. Dante's personal number again, in case she wanted to call before tomorrow. Inside her apartment, reality crashed down. Emma sank onto her couch and stared at the water stain on the ceiling. Mind-spinning. $200,000. Financial freedom. The chance to actually help a child who desperately needed someone. But working for Dante Caruso meant stepping into a world of violence and moral ambiguity. Becoming complicit in things she'd spent her life trying to escape. Her father had been killed in gang violence when she was 10. Her mother had worked herself to death trying to make ends meet. Emma had fought so hard to build a different life. A clean life. A life that meant something. Now she was being offered everything she'd ever wanted, wrapped in the trappings of exactly what she'd been running from. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Miss Carter? Miss Carter? A woman's voice. Crisp and professional. This is Catherine Stevens from Roosevelt Elementary. I'm the district supervisor. I understand you met with Mr. Caruso this morning. Emma's stomach dropped. How did you? Mr. Caruso contacted the district superintendent directly. He's offering a substantial donation to our schools, enough to fund art and music programs for the next 5 years, in exchange for releasing you from your teaching contract. Catherine paused. The board has already approved it. We'd like to make this transition as smooth as possible. I haven't even decided yet, Emma protested weakly. The donation isn't contingent on your decision. Mr. Caruso was very clear about that. Catherine's voice softened. Between you and me, Miss Carter, whatever he's offering you, take it. Men like Dante Caruso don't make offers lightly. And this donation will help hundreds of children. The call ended, leaving Emma staring at her phone. Dante had already moved the pieces. Had already ensured she couldn't use her contract as an excuse. Had already made it so that refusing would mean taking resources away from students who desperately needed them. Bastard. Brilliant, terrifying bastard. Emma spent the rest of the day wrestling with the decision. She called her best friend Rachel, who lived in Seattle now but had grown up in Chicago. Holy shit. Rachel breathed when Emma explained the situation. Dante Caruso? The Dante Caruso? You know him? Everyone knows of him. This is serious. The Caruso family is. They're not people you play games with. Rachel's voice filled with worry. But if he's offering you that kind of money and protection, he means it. That family's word is law. So, I should take it? I don't know. Can you live with yourself working for someone like that? That was the question, wasn't it? That night, Emma lay in bed listening to sirens outside her window. Gunshots in the distance. The sounds of her neighborhood, her reality. She thought about her students at Roosevelt, their bright faces despite the poverty and violence that surrounded them. Thought about her own desperate scramble just to survive, month after month. And she thought about Marco, his small body shaking with sobs. The desperate way he'd clung to her, the light that had returned to his eyes when she'd spoken to him in his mother's language. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. At 6 a.m., Emma's phone rang. Dante Caruso. I need your answer, Miss Carter. Emma took a breath. I have conditions. Name them. I want to continue volunteering at Roosevelt Elementary. 2 afternoons a week. Non-negotiable. Emma's voice grew stronger. And I want regular updates on where that donation money goes. I need to know it's actually helping the kids. Done. What else? Marco's education. When the time comes, I want input on his schooling. He needs to be somewhere that respects his trauma, his language, his ag-read, anything else. Emma closed her eyes. I need to know I can leave. If this isn't working, if I can't handle your world, if Marco doesn't need me anymore, I walk away. No strings. No consequences. The pause on the other end stretched long enough that Emma's heart hammered. You can leave any time you want, Dante said finally. But know this, Miss Carter. Once you're part of my family's life, I will always ensure you're protected. That doesn't end just because you stop working for me. You'll always be under my protection, whether you want it or not. The words should have sounded threatening. Instead, they sounded like a vow. Then I accept, Emma said. The car will be there in an hour. Pack enough for a week. You'll be staying at the estate while we establish routines and security protocols. Staying there? Emma's voice rose. You didn't mention that part. I'm mentioning it now. Marco needs consistency. That means being available when he wakes from nightmares, when he has difficult mornings, when he needs reassurance at bedtime. Dante's tone brooked no argument. We have a guest house. Completely private. You'll have your own space. Dante. 1 hour, Miss Carter. Don't make me send my men to pack for you. The line went dead. Emma stared at her phone, heart racing. What had she just agreed to? She spent 55 minutes, throwing clothes into a duffel bag, her mind spinning. This was crazy. Absolutely insane. Moving into a Mafia boss's estate to care for his traumatized son. This was how horror movies started. But it was also how miracles happened, she thought. Sometimes you had to step into darkness to find light on the other side. The Mercedes arrived exactly on time. Emma locked her apartment door, wondering if she'd ever really live here again. Probably not. The girl who'd worked herself to exhaustion just to survive was gone. In her place stood someone new, someone stepping into a world of wealth and danger and impossible choices. Someone who'd just sold her soul to save a little boy. Or maybe, Emma thought as the car pulled away from everything she'd known, someone who'd finally found a purpose worth the risk. At the Caruso estate, Lucia showed Emma to the guest house, a structure larger than her apartment, with a bedroom, bathroom, sitting area, and small kitchenette. Everything decorated in soft creams and golds, luxurious without being ostentatious. Mr. Caruso asked me to tell you that Marco is in the main house, Lucia said, her English touched with an Italian accent. He's been watching for your arrival all morning. Emma set down her bag. Lucia, can I ask you something? The housekeeper's expression warmed slightly. Of course, signorina. How long have you worked for the Caruso family? 23 years. Since before Marco was born. And Dante, is he? Emma struggled for words. Is he good to Marco? When no one's watching? Lucia's face transformed with fierce affection. Mr. Caruso loves that boy more than life itself. Everything he does, every difficult choice he makes, is to give Marco a better future. She moved toward the door, then paused. The family business, it is complicated. But Dante's heart? That is simple. His son is everything. After Lucia left, Emma freshened up and walked to the main house. Her heart hammered with every step. This was really happening. She was really doing this. Marco met her at the door, his face splitting into a huge smile. Emma, vivi qui adesso? Emma, do you live here now? Per un po', sì, Emma confirmed, crouching to his level. For a while, yes. Marco threw his arms around her neck. Over his shoulder, Emma saw Dante standing in the hallway, watching them. His expression was unreadable, but something in his eyes made Emma's breath catch. Possession, maybe. Or satisfaction. Or something more complicated that Emma didn't have words for. Welcome to the family, Miss Carter, Dante said quietly, and Emma felt the trap close around her with the soft, final click of a lock engaging. There was no going back now. The first week at the Caruso estate passed in a surreal blur. Emma fell into a routine that felt both natural and completely foreign. Mornings with Marco, teaching him letters and numbers in both English and Italian. Afternoons in the garden, where the boy showed her his favorite hiding spots and told her stories about his mother in halting, careful words. Evenings reading together before Dante came to say goodnight, his presence transforming the room with barely contained power. Emma lived in the guest house but spent most of her time in the main residence. She ate meals with Marco and Dante, sat in on the boys' therapy sessions, which were going remarkably better now that he was speaking again, and slowly, carefully, became part of the fabric of their lives. But she couldn't ignore the other aspects of Dante's world. The men in dark suits, who were constantly present. The hushed phone calls Dante took at odd hours, his voice dropping into Italian too rapid for Emma to follow. The nights when he didn't come home until dawn, his expression grim and closed off. On her 8th day at the estate, everything changed. Emma was reading to Marco in the library when Dante entered with 2 men she hadn't seen before. His expression was darker than usual, jaw tight with controlled anger. "Marco, vai con Lucia," Dante said quietly. "Marco, go with Lucia." The boy looked between his father and Emma, sensing tension. But Emma, adesso figlio. Now, son." The command in Dante's voice was absolute. After Marco left, Dante turned to Emma. "We have a situation." One of the men stepped forward, pulling out a tablet. "Someone's been making inquiries about you, Miss Carter. About your connection to Mr. Caruso. Your background. Your daily routines." Emma's blood turned cold. "Who?" "We're still determining that," Dante said. "But whoever it is has resources. They've accessed your banking records, contacted people from your past, and as of this morning, they've been surveilling Roosevelt Elementary." "Why?" Emma's voice came out small. "I'm nobody. You're someone close to my son." Dante moved toward her, his presence overwhelming. "That makes you valuable. To my enemies, you're a potential weakness. A way to get to Marco, and through him, to me." The reality of what she'd agreed to crashed down on Emma. This wasn't just about teaching a little boy Italian. It was about being entangled in a world where people used children as leverage, where her very existence put a target on her back. "What do we do?" Emma asked. Dante's expression was granite. "From now on, you don't go anywhere without security. Not to Roosevelt for your volunteer work. Not to the grocery store. Nowhere. And we accelerate the timeline." "What timeline?" "I was going to wait another month," Dante said. "But circumstances have changed. You need to be officially part of this family. Publicly, visibly. In a way that makes it clear that anyone who touches you will face consequences." Emma's heart hammered. "What does that mean?" Dante looked at her for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but absolute. "It means, Miss Carter, that as of tonight, you're not just Marco's companion anymore." "Then what am I?" Dante's smile was cold and possessive. "Mine." Emma stood in the library, Dante's word hanging in the air like a blade about to fall. The 2 security men had left at some silent signal from their boss, leaving her alone with Chicago's most dangerous man. "Yours," Emma repeated slowly. "What exactly does that mean?" Dante moved to the bar cart, pouring 2 glasses of amber liquid. He offered her one, which she took on autopilot. "It means we make a public statement. Tomorrow night there's a charity gala at the Drake Hotel. Every important family in Chicago will be there. You'll attend as my date. Your date." Emma's laugh was slightly hysterical. "You want to parade me in front of the entire criminal underworld? I want to make it clear that you're under my protection. That harming you means war with the Caruso family." Dante took a sip of his drink, watching her over the rim. "In our world, Miss Carter, perception is everything. Right now you're a question mark, an unknown variable. That makes you vulnerable. But if they see you with me, at my side, wearing my claim, wearing your..." Emma set down her glass before she dropped it. "This is insane. I agreed to help Marco, not become some kind of mob wife accessory. You're not becoming anything you're not already." Dante's voice was quiet, dangerous. "The moment you accepted my offer, you became part of my world. I'm simply making that official. By using me as a prop in your power games? By keeping you alive." Dante crossed the distance between them in 2 strides. Up close, Emma could see the strain around his eyes, the tightness in his jaw. "I don't make these decisions lightly, Emma, but someone is targeting you. Someone who knows that you matter to Marco. Which means they know you matter to me. The way he said it, with such certainty, made Emma's breath catch. I've been here 8 days. 8 days is an eternity in my world. Dante's hand came up, his fingers brushing her cheek with unexpected gentleness. You've brought my son back from the edge of silence. You've made this house feel like a home again instead of a mausoleum. Do you have any idea what that's worth to me? Emma's throat felt tight. You barely know me. I know everything that matters. Dante's thumb traced along her jawline. I know you spend your own money buying supplies for your students. I know you visit your mother's grave every Sunday with wildflowers you pick yourself because you can't afford the expensive ones. I know you cry at night when you think no one can hear, because the weight of surviving alone is crushing you. Stop, Emma whispered, tears burning her eyes. Stop investigating me. I can't. It's how I protect what's mine. Dante's hand dropped, but he didn't step back. Tomorrow night, you'll wear a dress I've had prepared. You'll stand beside me at the gala. And you'll let Chicago's underworld see that Emma Carter belongs to Dante Caruso. And what do I get in return for playing this role? Life. Dante's voice was flat. Because the alternative is that whoever's hunting you continues to circle, getting closer until they find an opening. And then Marco loses someone else he's learned to love. The manipulation was so smooth, so perfectly executed, that Emma almost missed it. But there it was, the blade wrapped in silk. Refuse and Marco suffers. Accept and she becomes a pawn in games she doesn't understand. I hate you right now, Emma said quietly. I can live with that. Dante moved toward the door. As long as you're alive to hate me. The dress will be delivered to your room by 6 p.m. tomorrow. We leave at 7. After he left, Emma sank into a chair, her whole body shaking. This was spiraling out of control so fast. She'd thought she understood what she was agreeing to: help a traumatized child, earn enough money to escape her crushing debt, then return to her normal life. But there was no normal life anymore. There was only before Marco, and after. A soft knock interrupted her spiral. Lucia entered with a tea tray, her expression sympathetic. Mr. Caruso asked me to bring you this. He thought you might need it. Lucia, Emma said as the housekeeper set down the tray. Is this how it always is? Him making decisions and everyone just going along with them? Lucia poured the tea with practiced grace. Mr. Caruso makes difficult choices so others don't have to. It is his burden, Signorina, but he does not do it without reason. He's using me to send a message. He's using his power to protect you. Lucia met Emma's eyes. When Maria was alive, Mr. Caruso was different, softer perhaps, but after she died. The housekeeper's expression grew sad. He cannot lose anyone else, especially not someone Marco has attached himself to. So yes, he makes choices that feel like control, but beneath that, it is fear. Fear of what? Of failing again, of being too late, of having the power to protect and not using it. Lucia moved toward the door. Drink your tea, Signorina. Tomorrow will be difficult, but Mr. Caruso will be beside you. That counts for more than you know. The next evening, Emma stared at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. The dress Dante had chosen was a masterpiece, deep emerald silk that hugged every curve before flowing to the floor, a back that plunged dangerously low, delicate straps that showed off shoulders Emma didn't know could look elegant. The jewelry that came with it was even more shocking: diamonds that had to be real, because no one bought fakes this convincing. Earrings, a bracelet, and a necklace that felt heavy with meaning and value. A stylist had arrived at 4 to do her hair and makeup. Emma's dark curls were swept up into something sophisticated and timeless. Her face was transformed with expert makeup, eyes smoky and dramatic, lips painted deep red. She looked like someone who belonged on Dante Caruso's arm. Someone powerful and confident and utterly removed from the broke teacher who'd lived on ramen and terror. A knock at the door. Miss Carter? One of Dante's security men. Mr. Caruso is ready. Emma took a breath and opened the door. The guard's eyes widened fractionally, the only sign of surprise he allowed himself before he led her through the main house to where Dante waited. He stood in the foyer wearing a tuxedo that had clearly been custom-made. Black, perfectly tailored, making him look like danger wrapped in elegance. When he saw Emma, he went completely still. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Sei bellissima, Dante finally said, his voice rough. You're beautiful. It's the dress, Emma said, nervous under his intense gaze. And the jewelry, and the professional hair and makeup. Put enough money into presentation and anyone can it's you. Dante moved toward her, his eyes never leaving her face. The dress is just fabric. The jewelry is just stones. But you. He stopped close enough that Emma could smell his day. Cologne, something dark and expensive that made her pulse quicken. You take my breath away. Emma's cheeks burned. We should go. Don't want to be late for your power play. Something flickered in Dante's eyes hurt. Maybe. Or disappointment. But his expression smoothed into that controlled mask he wore so well. Of course. The car is waiting. The drive to the Drake Hotel was silent. Emma stared out the window at Chicago's glittering skyline, trying to calm her racing heart. Beside her, Dante worked on his phone, his expression unreadable. When we arrive, Dante said as they neared the hotel, stay close to me. Don't accept drinks from anyone else. Don't go anywhere without telling me first. And if anyone makes you uncomfortable, you signal me immediately. How do I signal you? Dante took her hand, his fingers warm against hers. Touch your necklace. Like this. He guided her hand to the diamond necklace at her throat. My men will see it and extract you instantly. You really think something could happen at a charity gala? I think some of the most dangerous people in Chicago will be in that ballroom tonight. Dante's grip on her hand tightened. And they'll all be watching you, trying to determine what you mean to me, how you can be used, what leverage you represent. This is the protection you promised? Emma's voice rose slightly. Throwing me to the wolves? I'm the biggest wolf in the room, Dante said quietly. And I'm making it clear that you're mine. No one will touch you, but they will test. They will probe. They will try to find weaknesses. His dark eyes held hers. Don't give them any. The car stopped. Outside, cameras flashed paparazzi lined the red carpet leading into the hotel. Emma's stomach dropped. There are photographers? This is a society event. Of course there are. Dante straightened his cuffs. Smile, look comfortable, and remember you belong here because I say you do. The door opened. Dante exited first, then turned to offer Emma his hand. The moment her fingers touched his, cameras exploded in a frenzy of flashes. Shouted questions filled the air. Mr. Caruso, who's your date? Sir, is this a new relationship? Miss, what's your name? Dante's arm slid around Emma's waist, pulling her close against his side. The possession in the gesture was unmistakable. His hand rested on her hip, warm through the thin silk, as he guided her down the carpet with the confidence of a man who owned the world. Emma forced herself to smile, to walk without trembling, to pretend she did this every day. Beside her, Dante radiated controlled power, nodding to people, ignoring questions, completely in his element. Inside the hotel, the ballroom was a vision of old-world elegance. Crystal chandeliers, marble columns, tables draped in white silk. Hundreds of people in tuxedos and designer gowns mingled with champagne flutes, their laughter and conversation creating a sophisticated buzz. But Emma felt the moment they noticed Dante's arrival. Conversations paused. Heads turned. Eyes tracked them as Dante led her deeper into the room, his hand never leaving her waist. Dante, a distinguished man in his 60s, approached, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. I heard you'd be attending. I didn't realize you'd be bringing a guest. Giovanni. Dante's voice was cordial but cool. May I introduce Emma Carter? Emma, this is Giovanni Marchetti. His family controls the waterfront shipping interests. Emma shook his hand, feeling him assess her like livestock. A pleasure, Miss Carter. And how did you meet our Dante? Through his son, Emma said, deciding honesty was less dangerous than evasion. I'm Marco's companion. Ah, Giovanni's eyebrows rose. The famous teacher. Yes, I'd heard Dante found someone to help the boy. How? Charitable of you. The condescension was subtle but unmistakable. Emma felt Dante's hand tighten on her waist in warning. Don't react. Marco's a wonderful child, Emma said. Evenly. Any time spent with him is a gift. How sweet. A woman materialized beside Giovanni. Younger, beautiful, with predatory eyes. I'm Francesca, Giovanni's daughter. I don't believe I've seen you at any of these events before. This is Emma's first, Dante said smoothly. I'm showing her our world. How brave of her. Francesca's smile was sharp. These gatherings can be so overwhelming for outsiders. So many complicated relationships and histories, so easy to make a mistake. Her gaze raked over Emma. That's a beautiful necklace. Family heirloom? A gift, Emma replied, understanding the question beneath the question. Is she serious, or just another temporary distraction? How generous. Francesca sipped her champagne. Dante's always been so, giving with his companions. Though they rarely last, do they? The stress of the lifestyle, I suppose. Not everyone can handle it. Dante's expression didn't change, but Emma felt the anger radiating from him. If you'll excuse, he said coldly, we have other people to greet. As they moved away, Emma whispered, was she one of many who'd like to be where you are? Dante murmured, ignore her. Francesca's been trying to establish an alliance between our families for years. Her father keeps pushing the connection, but I have no interest. They made their way through the ballroom, stopping every few feet as people intercepted them. Emma met a parrot of names and faces: Salvatore Romano, whose family controlled the South Side restaurants; Anthony the Luca, who ran waste management. Emma understood that was code for something else; Maria Conti, an elegant woman who owned half the legitimate businesses in Little Italy, and probably all the illegitimate ones. Each introduction followed the same pattern: polite questions that were really intelligence gathering, compliments that were actually warnings, smiles that didn't reach calculating eyes. Emma's face hurt from maintaining her pleasant expression. Her feet ached in the designer heels, and the weight of being constantly evaluated, constantly judged, constantly sized up as either an asset or a liability, was exhausting. You're doing well, Dante murmured during a brief moment alone. I know this is difficult. They all hate me, Emma whispered back. They're jealous of you. There's a difference. Dante guided her toward their table. You're an unknown quantity who has my attention. That makes you either an opportunity or a threat. They haven't decided which yet. Dinner was an exercise in controlled tension. Emma sat beside Dante at a table with 6 other couples, all connected to Chicago's organized crime families in various ways. The conversation flowed in Italian and English, touching on business matters that Emma suspected were being discussed in code. The man across from her, Antonio Ricci, spent most of the meal staring at her with unconcealed interest. So, Miss Carter, you're a teacher. That must be so rewarding. His tone made it sound like rewarding was code for pointless. It is, Emma said firmly. Helping children discover their potential, giving them tools to build better futures. I can't imagine anything more important. How nobly. Antonio's wife, a woman dripping in jewelry, smiled coldly. Though I imagine it doesn't pay very well. These public schools, they're always so underfunded. The implication was clear. She was with Dante for his money. Emma felt her temper flare. The pay is terrible. Emma agreed. But some things matter more than money. Easy to say when you're wearing diamonds that cost more than most people earn in a year. Francesca interjected from the next table over. She'd clearly been listening. Tell me, Miss Carter, did Dante also gift you that dress? Those shoes? Or did you have those lying around? The table went silent, everyone watching to see how Emma would handle the direct attack. Actually, Emma said calmly, Dante insisted I wear them tonight. Something about making the right impression. But personally, I was more comfortable in my old cardigan and clearance rack skirts. At least those were mine. Francesca's eyes narrowed. How quaint, playing the humble card, but we all know why you're really here. Do enlighten me, Emma said, her voice sweet as poison. You're a project. Dante's always had a savior complex. It's why he wastes time and money on those ridiculous community programs. You're just another charity case he's trying to fix. Once he realizes you can't be polished enough to actually fit in our world, he'll move on. He always does. Dante's hand slammed on the table hard enough to rattle the glasses. The entire ballroom seemed to freeze. Careful, Francesca. His voice was soft, lethal. You're about 30 seconds away from discovering exactly how far my patience extends. I'm just being honest, Francesca said, but her confidence had cracked. Everyone's thinking it. Someone had to say it. Then let me be. Equally honest. Dante stood, pulling Emma up beside him, his arm wrapped around her waist, holding her close. Emma is here because I want her here, because my son needs her, because she's brought light back into my life after months of darkness. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. He looked around the table, his gaze touching on each person. And for those wondering about her place in my life, let me be crystal clear. Emma Carter is under my protection, completely. Anyone who disrespects her, threatens her, or even looks at her wrong will answer to me. Personally. The silence was absolute. Emma felt every eye in the ballroom on them. Now, Dante continued, his voice dropping back to that dangerous quiet. Does anyone else have concerns they'd like to voice? Or can we continue this meal in peace? No one spoke. Dante sat back down, pulling Emma with him. Under the table, his hand found hers, squeezing gently. The gesture was reassuring, possessive, and utterly public. Emma's heart hammered. She'd just been claimed in front of Chicago's criminal elite. There was no ambiguity now. No question about her status. Dante Caruso had drawn a line in the sand, and she was on his side of it. The rest of the dinner passed in stilted conversation. Francesca remained silent, her face tight with humiliation. Others at the table made awkward attempts at normalcy, but the tension never fully dissipated. After dinner, as couples moved to the ballroom floor for dancing, Dante guided Emma toward the terrace. The cool October air was a relief after the stifling atmosphere inside. "I'm sorry," Dante said once they were alone. "That was worse than I expected. You warned me people would test me." Emma leaned against the railing, looking out at Chicago's glittering lights. "I just didn't expect it to be so vicious. Francesca's been rejected multiple times. She took her anger out on you." Dante moved beside her, close enough that their arms but touched. "But I meant what I said in there. You're under my protection now. That announcement changes everything. Changes it how? It means you're officially part of my world, connected to the Caruso family in a way that can't be undone." Dante turned to face her, his expression serious. "There's no going back from this, Emma. Even if you left tomorrow, you'd still carry that association, still be a target for anyone wanting to hurt me." Emma's throat tightened. "So I'm trapped. You're protected." Dante's hand came up, cupping her face with unexpected gentleness. "I know you hate me for forcing this, for making decisions without asking. But Emma, I couldn't," his voice roughened, "I couldn't bear to lose you. Not when Marco's finally healing. Not when you've become." "What?" Emma whispered. "What have I become?" Dante's thumb brushed across her cheekbone. "Essential." The word hung between them, loaded with meaning. Emma's breath caught, as Dante leaned closer, his intent. Unmistakably. He was going to kiss her. Here, on this terrace, where anyone could see, where everyone would see. Emma's hand pressed against his chest, stopping him. "Dante, wait." He froze, jaw clenched. "Emma, is this real?" Emma asked, her voice shaking. "Or is this just another part of the performance? Another way to sell the image that I'm yours?" Dante stared at her for a long moment. Then he stepped back, his expression shuddering. "Does it matter? Real or performance, the result is the same. You're safe. Marco is happy. The families know not to touch you." "It matters to me," Emma said, "because I need to know if I'm just a prop in your world, or if I actually mean something to you." "You mean everything to Marco." "That's not what I asked." Dante was silent, his hands clenched at his sides. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. "I don't know how to answer that. I don't know how to separate what I feel from what I need. All I know is that the thought of you being hurt, of someone using you to get to me, it makes me want to burn the world down. That's not love, Dante. That's possession. In my world, they're the same thing." Dante's eyes met hers, dark and tortured. "I'm not a good man, Emma. I've done things that would horrify you. Hurt people. Destroyed lives. I don't know how to love the way normal people do. All I know is how to protect what's mine. How to control and defend and eliminate threats. And is that what I am? Something you need to control? You're something I can't afford to lose." Dante moved closer again, his presence overwhelming. "Tell me honestly, Emma. If I could promise you complete freedom, no obligations, no danger, would you stay? Would you choose to be here? With Marco? With me? Or would you run back to your old life?" Emma opened her mouth to answer and realized she didn't know. A month ago, the answer would have been obvious. But now, after weeks of watching Dante with his son, seeing the gentleness beneath the Dante, violence, the fear beneath the control, she wasn't sure anymore. "I don't know." Emma admitted. And that terrifies me. Dante nodded slowly, something like pain crossing his features. At least you're honest. He offered his arm. We should go back inside. We've been gone too long. As they returned to the ballroom, Emma felt the weight of dozens of eyes tracking them. The gossip would already be spreading. Dante Caruso and his mysterious teacher, arguing on the terrace, tension in paradise. But what no one else could see was the confused tangle of Emma's heart. The way Dante's words had burrowed under her skin. The terrifying realization that she'd started to care about this dangerous, complicated man who'd exploded into her life. She was supposed to be just helping his son. Supposed to stay detached. Professional. Instead, she was falling into something she didn't understand, with a man who admitted he didn't know how to love properly. This was going to end in disaster. Emma knew, it with bone-deep certainty. She just couldn't seem to make herself run. The ballroom had transformed while they'd been outside. The formal dinner had given way to dancing. Couples swirling across the floor to a live orchestra. The atmosphere had loosened slightly, champagne flowing more freely. But Emma still felt the weight of attention as Dante guided her back to their table. Francesca watched from across the room with barely concealed malice. Antonio Ricci's gaze followed Emma with calculation, and Giovanni Marchetti stood near the bar with several other older men, their expressions serious as they glanced in Dante's direction. Something's wrong, Emma murmured to Dante. The way they're looking at you. I know. Dante's hand rested on her lower back, protective. Giovanni's been trying to force a meeting for weeks. He's likely using tonight to corner me. About what? Before Dante could answer, Giovanni himself approached, flanked by two men Emma didn't recognize. Both were older, dressed expensively, radiating the kind of power that came from decades of control. Dante, Giovanni said smoothly. I wonder if you might spare a few moments. There's a matter we need to discuss. Business, I'm afraid. Emma and I were about to dance, Dante replied coolly. I'm sure Miss Carter won't mind waiting. Giovanni's smile didn't reach his eyes. This concerns the Southside territories, the arrangement your father made before his death. It's time to renegotiate the terms. Emma felt Dante tense. The terms are non-negotiable. My father's agreements stand. Your father isn't here anymore. One of the other men spoke up, his accent heavily Italian. And circumstances have changed. The old arrangements no longer serve everyone's interests. Then those whose interests aren't being served are welcome to take it up with my father's ghost, Dante said flatly. I'm not discussing business tonight. Actually, Giovanni's voice hardened. You are, because if you refuse, we'll be forced to consider our options. And I don't think you want certain options being considered. Not with your son to think about. And now, your lovely companion. The threat was subtle but unmistakably. Emma's blood ran cold. Dante's expression went absolutely glacial. When he spoke, his voice was soft and terrifying. Are you threatening my family, Giovanni? I'm reminding you that your family's safety depends on maintaining good relationships with other families. Giovanni spread his hands. All I'm asking is for a conversation. 30 minutes. Surely that's not unreasonable. Emma watched Dante's jaw work, saw the calculation in his eyes. He was trapped between refusing and appearing weak, or accepting and leaving her vulnerable. I'll give you 15 minutes, Dante said finally. Emma comes with me. This is family business, one of the other men objected. She's under my protection. That makes her family. Dante's tone brooked, no argument. Either she comes or there's no meeting. Giovanni exchanged glances with his associates, then shrugged. Fine. Let her see how business is done. They were led to a private room off the ballroom, a study, richly appointed with leather furniture and dark wood. Two of Dante's security men followed, taking positions by the door. Emma felt distinctly out of place as the men arranged themselves around a conference table. Sit, Dante instructed Emma quietly, pulling out a chair. Don't speak unless I tell you to. Emma sat, her heart hammering. She was about to witness something dangerous. Something she probably shouldn't see. Now, Giovanni said once everyone was settled. Let's discuss the reality of your situation, Dante. Your father controlled the South Side through a combination of respect and fear. But you're younger, less established. Some families are questioning whether the Caruso territory is as secure as it once was. My territory is perfectly secure, Dante replied coldly. Is it? The Italian man leaned forward. I'm Riccardo Vitale, from the old country. I've been asked to assess the situation here in Chicago, and from my perspective, there are concerning signs. Your focus has been divided. First by grief over your wife, now by... His gaze slid to Emma. Personal matters. My personal life doesn't affect my business. Doesn't it? Riccardo smiled thinly. You're spending resources protecting a woman who isn't even part of the family, allocating men to guard a teacher instead of maintaining territory, making emotional decisions instead of strategic ones. These are signs of weakness, Dante. They're signs of humanity, Dante countered. Something you'd understand if you had any. Humanity is expensive in our world. Giovanni cut in. Which brings us to our proposal. The South Side territories generate approximately $20 million annually. Under your father's arrangement, the Caruso family keeps 70%, with the remaining 30% divided among allied families. We're proposing a new arrangement, 50-50. Emma's head spun at the numbers being discussed so casually. 20 million. These men were negotiating criminal enterprises worth more than she could comprehend. Absolutely not, Dante said flatly. Then let me present our alternative. Riccardo's voice turned cold. We can contest your control directly, force you to defend every street, every operation, every business. The resulting conflict would be expensive for all of us, but particularly for you, because you'd be fighting while also protecting your son and your teacher. The threat against Marco made Emma's blood boil. She started to speak, but Dante's hand shot out, gripping her wrist in warning. Careful, Riccardo, Dante said softly. You're suggesting violence against a child. That crosses lines even we don't cross. I'm suggesting that a distracted leader can't defend his territory, Riccardo replied. That's simply reality. If you can't maintain control, someone else will. Better to negotiate now while you still have leverage. My leverage, Dante said, his voice dropping to something deadly, is that I'm the most dangerous man in this city. Every family knows it. Every law enforcement agency knows it. You can test me if you want, Riccardo, but understand that I'll respond with everything I have. And what I have is substantial. The room went silent. Emma felt the tension crackling like electricity. Finally, Giovanni cleared his throat. Perhaps we've started on the wrong foot. Let's table the percentage discussion and talk about something simpler. The community programs your family funds, the scholarships, the business loans, the neighborhood initiatives. They're expensive. And frankly, they send the wrong message. We're not social workers, Dante. We're businessmen. Those programs buy loyalty, Dante countered. They ensure the community protects us instead of cooperating with law enforcement. They're an investment. They're a waste. Riccardo dismissed. The old ways worked fine for generations. You don't need to be loved. You need to be feared. My father understood that fear and loyalty aren't mutually exclusive. Dante leaned forward. The people in those neighborhoods know the Caruso family takes care of them. That matters. It's why we have eyes and ears everywhere. Why the police can't get witnesses. Why our operations run smoothly. Or, Giovanni said slowly, it's because your sentimentality makes you weak, makes you care about people who don't matter. Like teachers who have no business being in this room. Emma felt his contempt like a physical blow. She was proof of Dante's weakness. Evidence that he'd let personal feelings compromise his judgment. Emma matters to my son, Dante said, his voice hard. That makes her more important than any of you. Riccardo laughed, sharp and cruel. You see, Giovanni? This is exactly what I meant. He values a woman he's known for weeks over alliances that have existed for decades. This isn't leadership. It's self-indulgence. Then let me indulge one more time. Dante stood, pulling Emma up with him. This meeting is over. My answer is no to your territorial changes, no to cutting the community programs, and no to any further discussions that involve threatening my family. You're making a mistake, Giovanni warned. I'm making a choice. Dante's hand tightened on Emma's. And my choice is to protect what matters. If that makes me weak in your eyes, so be it. But test me, Giovanni. Please, test me and discover exactly how weak I am. The promise of violence in Dante's voice was unmistakable. Emma felt it in her bones, saw it in the way the other men shifted uncomfortably. We'll be in touch, Riccardo said coldly. Soon. Dante led Emma out of the room, his security closing ranks around them. In the hallway, away from the others, Emma finally spoke. They're going to come after you. After Marco. After me. Yes. Dante didn't sugarcoat it. That meeting was a declaration of war disguised as a negotiation. Because of me. Emma's voice shook. Because I'm proof you're distracted. Weak. Because they're greedy and they think they can take what's mine. Dante stopped, turning to face her. This isn't your fault, Emma. This was coming regardless. But they've chosen to make you a focal point, which means we need to accelerate our timeline even more. What timeline? Dante's expression was grim. The one where you become so publicly, so officially mine that touching you would mean certain death. Emma's stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means, Dante said quietly, that tomorrow, we're making an announcement. You're not just Marco's companion anymore. You're not just under my protection. You're going to become part of the Caruso family in a way that's absolutely unambiguous. Dante, what are you planning? He looked at her for a long moment, something almost apologetic in his eyes. Something that will either save us all or destroy what's left of your normal life forever. Before Emma could demand clarification, Dante's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression went deadly. We need to leave. Now. What's wrong? Someone just triggered the security system at the estate. Dante was already moving, his guards falling in around them. Where Marco is. Terror seized Emma's chest. Is he okay? I don't know. Dante's voice was raw with fear as they rushed toward the exit. But if anyone has touched my son, Chicago is about to discover exactly how dangerous I am when something I love is threatened. They burst out of the hotel into the night, and Emma realized with crystal clarity that whatever happened next would change everything. The war had begun, and she was standing right in the center of it. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel.